What were the dudes that you were hanging out around? Because you said that Oceanside has Bloods, Crips, and Southsiders. How did you end up going a different way?
I was around a lot of different people as a kid. I mean, not only those hoods, but we had a lot of cliques too.
Okay.
So I mean, the people I was around really, like, I'm half black, half Mexican, so it wasn't like I was just around one race at a time.
Right.
And I have relatives from both races, both sides. So it was like, I just ended up going a different way. And then my uncle being who he is, so my uncle is one of my older homies, and he's from an organization that's not really even based in California.
Right. That's why people are so surprised. There's so many like gang options, but I never met anybody who was GD from LA or from Southern California. I don't think. Obviously, we talked to a ton of Chicago dudes who rep that in New York, but then at the same time, I've seen documentaries about kind of more like militant GD branches in other states, and some of them I've even heard say basically that like they specifically do not with other forms of being a GD. So I'm sure there's I mean, there's really so many options. So I mean, you have folks and you have people. So peoples and folks is I'm not going to compare it to Crips and Bloods, but it's really just one or the other, and you have different types of folks. So I mean, being a GD wherever you are, like the difference is I'm a GD. I'm not from GD. You know what I mean? I'm not from a certain section. I mean, if I was from Chicago, then it'd be like, okay, maybe I'm from 11-9, maybe I'm from, you know what I mean, 073, whatever the case may be. But I'm not really gonna go too much into how many states have folks in them, but or how many areas have folks in them, or the PO or any kind of structure or anything like that. But it's there. It's there in different states that you wouldn't even expect. And so I mean, of course, like when a lot of things happened, a lot of folks branched off to the south, and we had a lot of folks down there that way. Really, the reason that we have a lot of guys out here is because of the military. That is one of the reasons. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So because folks would come, be in the military, and then they come out this way due to Camp Pendleton or wherever they were stationed at. When they stayed, it's like that was what it was. So I mean, me being my age, I was the youngest. I was the only one from California. Everybody that was older than me was from. My uncle's from Chicago. My mom's side is from Chicago. One of my older homies is from Killeen, Texas. Of course, that's a military town. Folks from Miami, from St. Louis, So a lot of these guys are from different states, but I'm the only one that was really this, that they was this young, and I was from California.
And when you're talking about getting into the streets, though, you're kind of making it sound as if you were angry and looking for, kind of to get into trouble or whatever, but then it seems like you actually joined an organization that was probably the most like serious and
kept me in check,
intent on like they have like a real structure. It's not supposed to be something that's just like rampant negativity for the community. Yeah, it's
growth and development. And so that was like before I came home, so to say. A lot of my decisions were just stupid ass decisions that I decided to do, whatever I decided to get into. But then when I became folks, it was like, there are things in line that keep me in check, that make me believe in. And, when I was younger, it was more so like, oh, okay, I'm a gangster disciple, this and that. But, when you get older, and then I have more of that growth and development mentality, and the people that watch, that understand that, will understand what I'm saying without going too far in depth about it. There's certain things that are in line to where, when I say certain things, they'll understand where I'm coming from. Or even like, I ended up in Glendale, Arizona, right outside of Phoenix, like 2 years ago, and I was at a Circle K buying a beer, and then I ran into some guys that ended up becoming folks, and we, had these conversations, some words were exchanged, and they understood who I was without, and we have like a no vouch rule, so there's nobody that could really, like, if I go to another state, they can't call nobody and be like, yo, this is so and so, he's good, like, I'm gonna, I have to stand on my six myself and spit my literature.
That's interesting. No vouch, because I feel like I'm in like the poker world, and vouching is a big thing in the sense of like, if me and you are gonna play and you don't have 100,000 on you, but we want to play for 100,000, it's like if I have a friend who I trust and he'll vouch for you, then it's like there's just like a code amongst like poker players that it's like I'll assume that you're good for it, and if you aren't, then I can basically ask that dude to make shit correct, which is a lot of people would never imagine having that level of trust. But that's really interesting.
Same idea. So I mean, it's like, and even with that, and even being in a different area, basically the idea is no matter where I go, I'm a representation of the nation as a whole. So, I mean, we say this thing, which is like one is all and all is one. So basically I represent the nation as a whole no matter where I'm at. So even if I come in this building, I'm the only one of the folks that's here. Everything that I do is a representation of all the guys, you know? And so wherever the guys are at, I'm at as well. You know what I mean? It's kind of confusing in that sense, but basically what I'm saying is I represent the entire nation with all my actions and what I do. And basically I'm given, you know, certain pieces of lit that make me act a certain way, so I can conduct myself as a proper person.
And was it always is the like memorizing your literature and like being able to have those conversations and sound like fluid with your speech about that shit? That's like a huge part of having respect in that world.
I mean, not even just having respect, but it's just a representation of who you are, and so that way the guys know, you know, who you are as a person, you know what I mean? And you know, your representation in a room full of the guys or your representation in public.
So do you think that by becoming GD, it made you go in a healthier direction in your life as opposed to some of the other things you could have done?
Way better route. The folks were there when I graduated high school. You know what I mean? And it made me grow and develop. Like I said, it made me grow and develop. It made me a gentleman of a distinguished nature, all of it. You know what I mean? And, you know, in a more positive note. You know, and through that, I was able to kind of get on that route to where it was like, things are better, you know what I mean? And, you know, they kept me in check and they gave me that guidance, and not even just guidance in that sense, but just guidance as a person to where I could be a better person. And these guys that are older than me made sure that I was always taken care of, or whatever I needed, or if I needed a job, you know, and folks were, you know, getting out of prison sentences and then coming out and getting jobs as, you know, managers at grocery stores, making sure the rest of the guys were taken care of and had jobs, you know.
It's crazy because people always want to ask me, like, how we could stop gangbanging or some shit. And I'm like, it's not about that, because that's never going to happen. It's more about, like, the gangs themselves have to evolve and change and become more positive. And like we see like small examples of that, where you can see how like certain gangs will like have, you know, like clearly like much more care for the people and don't want to just cause destruction and shit like that. Like, I mean, is from your perspective, is that like, is being a GD like something you would recommend to your son or to a young man?
Not to my son. I mean, I'm going to utilize the things that I did learn from being folks and, you know, teach that to my son just as being a good person, you know, characteristics wise. Right. I'm not going to hand my son anything and be like, here, learn this, you know what I mean? You have 90 days to learn this, or, you know what I mean? Or
really? Because that's what parents do with the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Tell your kid, hey, read this shit. I believe this shit. You better fucking read it, man.
I mean, my relationship with my folks and my relationship with God is two different things, you know what I mean? So that would be different, but I wouldn't even push the Bible on my son. Really? Whatever my son decides to do, or whatever relationships my son decides to have with God, is completely on him. You know what I mean? I'm not going to push it on him. So, I mean, with that being said, you know, it isn't something that I will push on anybody else, because it was my own personal decision to become folks and to come home. So, and it helped me differently than it might have helped other people. You know, teach their own, and everybody's experience with this is different, and I've watched it firsthand. So, you know, there's a lot to it, but like I said, personally with me, you know, I wouldn't have changed anything. You know, I would not have changed anything because of the things that I've learned. You know, I feel like, but I mean, as far as other organizations in the streets, to each their own as well. However they decide to handle certain things, everybody has their politics, and you know what I mean. I don't feel like that's for me to speak on.
Do you feel any kind of like connection to when you see like other GD stuff going on? Or I don't know if you ever been like hanging out with somebody listening to King Von and all of a sudden he's screaming GDK. Like, does that not really sit right with you, even though it's completely separate?
Nah, I mean, that was what Von believed in. You know what I'm saying? And Von was a factor where he was from. You know, and you know, I don't feel like he went out. I feel like how he went out wasn't right. You know what I mean? And, you know, if that's the case with a lot of different things. But, I mean, personally, I don't listen to King Von. So, you know what I mean?
Based on listening to your music, I kind of assume that.
You know what I mean? It's just, you know, it's just different tastes of music. But I mean, there are those people out there that do listen to Von, that listen to Dirk, that listen to, you know what I mean, whoever they want to listen to, and that's completely on them.
But you're saying that the way that you that he went out didn't sit right with you? Like, you mean in just like the...
I feel like he should have caught that fade fairly.
See, there is that, but then there's also the reality when you really dig into it and how many threats were being thrown back and forth, that if you were Quando Rondo or Lil Tim, when you saw King Von and you already knew about the reputation that he had, and there's been all this back and forth online of like, it's the kind of situation where there are certain people where I feel like if I saw them in public, I would be able to shoot them and get away with it on self-defense just because of shit that has prior like occurred, you know, where it's like if it was presented in court, hey, this guy said this and this about me, so I was correct to act that way when it happened. I feel like that is kind of understandable at a certain point.
I mean, everybody's going to go about the situation differently. And basically, you know, Quando Rondo and, you know, his homies being from the streets, like, they're going to handle it however they feel suit, you know what I mean, righteous to. And, I mean, honestly, Von could have went about it a different way, too. I mean, if you really, you know, heard about Von's reputation, he really could have went about it however the he wanted to.
Given his reputation, the fact that he went about that the way that he did is so shocking because it's not like he was handling his problems with other people in Chicago that way.
Yeah, caught that fade. Caught that fade. And I mean, you know, like I said, if I feel like if he did handle it the way that everyone expected it, that he would have, you know what I mean, then it would have been a different story, obviously. I mean, and it would have just been another one on his list, you know what I'm saying? But,
right.
You know, but I mean, if that's the case, I mean, unfortunately, that's not the case. And, you know what I mean? It's, you know, it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't, you know what I mean? And he, you know, like I said, it's the name of the game though. The streets is